The arrival of the unseen Titan. The cold void of space stretched endlessly as the Vorn Dominion's fleet moved toward Earth. Hundreds of warships, each larger than a city, drifted in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed under the distant light of the sun, casting long shadows over the silent planet below. Admiral Cyrix stood on the command deck of his flagship, a towering figure with piercing yellow eyes. His race, the Vorn, had conquered dozens of planets. Earth was just another target. Humanity has no real defenses, one of his officers reported. Their fleet is small, outdated. Victory is certain. Cyrix smirked. Then let's not waste time. Send a transmission. A deep voice echoed through every human military channel. Humans, surrender now. Your weapons are useless. Your armies are weak. Submit or be erased. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, something strange happened. A single warship appeared out of nowhere. It didn't come from Earth. It didn't appear on any known hyperspace routes. It simply was there. A massive dark shape materialized between the stars, like a shadow stepping into the light. It made no sound. It didn't reflect any scans. And it did not move. The ship was unlike anything the Vorn had ever seen. It had no visible weapons, no glowing engines, no insignia. It just hovered there, watching. The bridge of Cyrix's flagship filled with nervous chatter. Sir, that ship, it's massive. What is it? Unknown, Admiral. Our scanners can't get a reading. It's absorbing the signals. Cyrix's smirk faded. This was not in the reports. Target it, he ordered. I want to see what happens. The moment Vorn weapons locked onto the warship, their targeting systems glitched. Red lights flashed across control panels. Weapons officers tapped their consoles frantically. Admiral, we can't lock onto it. Cyrix's fingers curled into a fist. Fire anyway. A dozen Vorn warships unleashed a storm of energy weapons. Bright plasma beams, torpedoes, and railgun slugs streaked toward the mysterious warship. Then, something impossible happened. Every single shot vanished before reaching the target. No explosions, no impact, nothing. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Cyrix's throat tightened. What just happened? A deep metallic hum filled the Vorn fleet's communication channels. Then, for the first time, a human voice responded. You have one chance. Leave now. Cyrix's jaw clenched. He refused to be intimidated. The Vorn Dominion had destroyed fleets, crushed empires, burned civilizations to ash. One ship. This wasn't a threat. This was an insult. Bring up the fleet, he growled. Surround it. We'll rip it apart. As the Vorn ships moved in, the warship finally reacted. It did not fire weapons. It did not send more warnings. It simply drifted forward, toward the fleet. And then, before the eyes of the entire Dominion Armada, one of their largest battleships disappeared. No explosion, no wreckage, no escape pods. One moment it was there, the next gone. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Cyrix felt something new. Fear, the first vanishing. The command deck of Admiral Cyrix's flagship was eerily silent. Every officer, every soldier, they all stared at the empty void where their battleship had been just moments ago. No explosion, no debris, nothing remained. Cyrix's fingers dug into the armrests of his command chair. What kind of weapon was this? The Vorn had fought countless species, each with their own tricks, but never had they seen a ship disappear without a trace. Scanners. Cyrix barked. Where did it go? His officers scrambled to respond. Screens flickered, data streams flooded the consoles, but the answer remained the same. Admiral, one of them finally whispered, voice unsteady. It's not anywhere. It's just gone. Cyrix's throat tightened. He refused to believe it. Weapons could destroy ships. Black holes could consume them. But something that simply erased a vessel from existence. Impossible. Pull the fleet back, he ordered. We need distance. But just as the Vorn warships began retreating, the human warship moved. It was slow, deliberate, like a predator stalking wounded prey. No thrusters burned. No energy signatures flared. It glided through space with an eerie, unnatural silence. Then, before the Vorn fleet could adjust their formations, another battleship vanished. Xerx's pulse pounded in his ears. This wasn't warfare. This was a nightmare. The officers on the bridge were panicking now. Fear was a foreign emotion to the Vorn, a species that thrived on conquest. But right now, they were afraid. Admiral, another officer shouted, we're detecting something strange. Xerx's gaze snapped to the screen. He expected to see weapon signatures, some sign of what the human ship was doing. But the readings made no sense. The space around the warship was bending, distorting like a black hole, but without any gravitational pull. It was as if reality itself was warping around the vessel. The realization struck Xerx like a hammer. This isn't a weapon, he whispered. This ship, it doesn't destroy. The officers turned to him, eyes wide with confusion. Xerx clenched his jaw. It erases. A slow, chilling realization spread through the crew. This ship wasn't firing weapons. It wasn't launching torpedoes. It was simply touching reality. And anything that came too close was removed from existence. Xerx's heart pounded. They had to leave. Full retreat, he roared. Now. Engines roared to life across the Vorn fleet. Warships turned, breaking formation, trying to escape the unnatural void in front of them. But it was too late. The warship shifted again. And then, the flagship next to Xerx's own command vessel, one of the most powerful ships in the Dominion fleet, vanished. No warning, no escape. Gone. Xerx's breathing became shallow. His officers were no longer following orders. They were frozen in place, staring at the screens in horror. The mysterious human ship stopped moving. It simply lingered in space, watching them. Then the same deep, calm voice echoed through their systems. We gave you a chance. For the first time in his life, Admiral Xerx made a choice not out of strategy, but out of terror. He turned to his communications officer. Send the order. All ships, jump to hyperspace. The officer hesitated. Sir, what about? Now, Xerx bellowed. Across the fleet, hyperspace drives powered up. Columns of light tore through space as the once mighty armada fled. All but one ship, Xerx's flagship. As the admiral turned back to the viewport, his blood ran cold. The human warship had finally moved again. And this time, it was coming for him. The last stand. Admiral Xerx had faced death many times. He had fought in planetary sieges, led ambushes against enemy fleets, and watched as entire civilizations crumbled before the Vorn Dominion's might. But never had he felt this kind of fear. The human warship drifted toward him like a specter, silent and patient. It was not chasing. It was hunting. Xerx's claws dug into the command console. He had only one option left. If he couldn't run, he would fight. Charge the main cannons. He barked. Redirect all power to shields. Fire everything we have. His crew hesitated. They had seen what happened to the other ships. But Xerx was their leader. If he ordered them to fight, they would fight. The Vorn flagship's weapons roared to life. Torpedoes streaked through the void. Plasma beams seared across space. Every weapon, every ounce of destruction the Vorn had ever used to crush their enemies. They threw it all at the human warship. The result? Nothing. The moment the energy blasts reached the human ship, they simply disappeared, vanished, as if reality itself refused to acknowledge the attack. Xerx's eyes widened. He felt his breath catch in his throat. What "What is this thing?" he whispered. Then, for the first time, the human ship responded. Not with words, not with weapons, but with a single, terrifying act. It vanished. One moment, it was in front of them. The next, gone. Xerxes' blood ran cold. Where did it go? His crew scrambled, scanning the area, desperately searching for the warship. But the readings made no sense. Then, a warning alarm shrieked through the command deck. Xerxes turned sharply, and his stomach dropped. The human warship was now behind them. Closer. Too close. Evasive maneuvers. Xerxes roared. Engines flared, thrusters burned bright. But it didn't matter. The warship wasn't bound by the rules of space. It moved where it wanted, when it wanted. And it was choosing to close the distance. Xerxes clenched his jaw. "This isn't war," he muttered. "This is a message." The deep voice returned, filling the command deck once more. "Your kind believes in conquest." The lights on the Vorn flagship flickered. "Your kind believes in power." Every console, every screen on the ship went dark. "Now, your kind will believe in fear." Xerxes' hands trembled. He had never felt powerless before, but now he understood. This warship, it wasn't a weapon. It was a warning. And the Vorn were meant to carry that warning home. Xerxes' vision blurred as a final command appeared on the darkened screens of his ship. "Leave." His officers didn't wait for an order. They activated the hyperspace drive immediately. The ship lurched, the fabric of space twisted, and in an instant, they were gone. Far, far away from the battlefield. Far away from the nightmare. Xerxes collapsed into his chair. His fleet was shattered. His empire was disgraced. And worst of all, he didn't even know what they had fought. But he knew one thing. The Vorn would never return to this system, because somewhere in the void, that warship was still watching. And if they dared to return, there would be no warning next time. The silent aftermath. The moment the Vorn flagship vanished into hyperspace, an eerie silence settled over the battlefield. The void, once filled with the screams of burning ships and the echoes of desperate battles, was now empty. The human warship drifted in the vast darkness, untouched, undamaged. It had not fired a single shot. It had not needed to. Aboard the UNSV Revenant, Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge, arms crossed, watching as the remnants of the Vorn fleet disappeared from the sensors. "They ran," he muttered. Beside him, Tactical Officer Jun Liu let out a low whistle, more like they fled in terror. The crew exchanged glances, some chuckling, others shaking their heads in disbelief. A fleet that had wiped out entire civilizations, a species that had enslaved dozens of worlds. And they had crumbled without a fight. Voss turned to his communications officer. "Status report. Lieutenant Ramirez scanned her console. They're in full retreat, sir. No lingering ships, no reinforcements detected. The Vorn Empire just backed down." Smart choice. Voss exhaled slowly. He tapped the reinforced steel of the command railing. This mission had been unlike any other. The Revenant wasn't just any warship. It was a legend wrapped in steel and secrecy. Built in the shadows of black-budget projects, it wasn't designed to fight wars. It was designed to prevent them. The galaxy was filled with conquerors, warlords, and empires that saw humanity as weak, as prey. So humanity had built something terrifying. A ghost ship, a myth, a weapon so advanced that its very presence shattered fleets before a single shot was fired. They called it the Revenant. And today, it had lived up to its name. Somewhere in the Outer Rim, deep within the Vorn Empire, Admiral Xerxes stood before the Dominion High Council. The room was vast, carved from obsidian, lit only by the flickering glow of ancient war banners. Around him, towering Vorn elites watched in silence, their golden eyes filled with contempt. "You fled," one of them hissed. Xerxes' mandibles twitched. "We faced something beyond war." The council remained unmoved. "You are the admiral of the Dominion's greatest fleet," another growled. "And yet you returned without victory." Hijirix's claws curled into a fist. "Victory." He let out a bitter laugh. "You speak of victory when you know nothing of what we faced." A hush fell over the chamber. Hijirix took a slow, deliberate breath. Then he leaned forward, voice cold and sharp. "It was not a warship." The council stared. It was a nightmare given form. Silence. Hijirix's eyes darkened. "We did not escape. It let us go." Somewhere in the council chambers, someone shifted uneasily. For the first time in their empire's history, the Vorn Dominion had encountered something they could not defeat, something they could not conquer, something that had looked upon them and decided they were not worth destroying. And that, Hijirix realized, was far more terrifying than death. The ripples of fear, news of the Vorn fleet's defeat spread like wildfire. No official report was made. No empire publicly acknowledged what had happened. But the whispers traveled faster than light. The Vorn Dominion, once an unstoppable force, had encountered something in the void, and they had run. No one knew what had scared them so badly. Some said they had fought a ghost. Others believed they had faced a doomsday weapon hidden by humanity. But the truth was far worse. Aboard the Revenant, Commander Elias Voss watched the incoming transmissions flood in. Messages from covert intelligence networks, intercepted Vorn distress signals, even coded warnings from other galactic factions. Every species wanted to know the same thing. What had the Vorn seen? Voss smirked. They wouldn't get an answer. The Revenant was more than a warship. It was a psychological weapon, wrapped in layers of secrecy. It was never meant to be understood, only feared. Jun Liu, the tactical officer, leaned against the console. "So what now, Commander? Do we head back?" Voss didn't answer right away. Because deep down, he knew something had changed. The mission had been a success, but the galaxy had just taken notice of humanity's true capabilities. And that meant new dangers were coming. Lieutenant Ramirez's voice cut through the silence. "Sir, we're picking up movement on the long-range scanners." Voss straightened. "Vorn?" Ramirez hesitated. "No, something else." The bridge fell silent. On the holographic display, an unknown fleet flickered into view. Their ships were sleek, obsidian black, and arranged in an unfamiliar formation. Liu narrowed his eyes. "I don't recognize that design." Voss tapped his fingers against the railing. "Neither do I." Then the encrypted transmission came through. A voice, distorted and alien, echoed across the bridge. "We saw what you did to the Vorn." Voss exhaled slowly. So it begins. The Revenant's legend had spread. And now, others wanted to test the nightmare for themselves. He turned to his crew. "Bring up the battle systems, if they came looking for a ghost." The bridge lights dimmed, and the ship's silent weapons came to life. "Let's make sure they find one." The hunters in the dark. The Revenant drifted in the void, surrounded by silence. But everyone on board knew they were being watched. Aboard the UNSV Revenant, Commander Elias Voss studied the holographic display. The unknown fleet hadn't moved. They simply hovered at the edge of sensor range, their obsidian black ships barely registering against the abyss. No transmissions, no aggressive maneuvers, just waiting. Jun Liu, the tactical officer, shifted uneasily. "They're testing us." Voss nodded. "They want to see if the Vorn ran for a reason, or if they were just cowards." A calculated silence hung in the air. Lieutenant Ramirez swallowed hard. "Sir, what if they're not here to fight?" Voss considered that. Then the incoming transmission arrived. A single sentence. "We are not like the Vorn." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Liu raised an eyebrow. "That's ominous." Ramirez hesitated. "They don't sound afraid." Voss exhaled. "That's because they're not." A deep instinct stirred in his gut. Whoever these beings were, they weren't here to conquer. They weren't here to surrender either. They had seen what the Revenant had done, and they wanted to know if it was truly a monster or just a trick. Voss stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. Send a response. Ramirez's fingers hovered over the controls. What should we say? Voss's voice was steady. Then prove it. The unknown fleet. Inside the lead warship, a figure watched the human vessel through shifting layers of data and tactical overlays. The humans were bold, unshaken. They had not responded with arrogance, nor had they shown fear. That was unexpected. A low voice rippled through the darkness of the command chamber. Begin the test. The fleet moved as one, silent, unrelenting. They were not like the Vorn. They were hunters, and they had come to see if the legend of the Revenant was real. The Revenant awakens. The unknown fleet moved like wraiths, their obsidian-black ships vanishing between the void and the starlight. They didn't open fire. They didn't broadcast threats. They simply advanced, closing the distance, testing the waters. On the Revenant's bridge, Commander Elias Voss stood motionless, watching the display as the hunters approached. They're fast, Jun Liu muttered. Too fast. Lieutenant Ramirez clenched his jaw. They're positioning themselves for a kill shot. Voss remained calm. Not yet. Liu frowned. What do you mean, not yet? Voss's eyes never left the display. They're waiting to see if we panic. The hunters had studied the Vorn's failure. They wanted to know if the Revenant was truly a nightmare or if the legend was just a trick. And so, they waited. Probing, hunting, searching for weakness. A silent battlefield. The unknown fleet formed a loose perimeter around the Revenant. Their formation was perfect, too perfect. They weren't just warships. They were predators. For a moment, neither side moved. Then, one of the black ships flickered out of existence. Not cloaked, not destroyed. Gone. Liu's fingers danced over the sensors. Did they just? Ramirez paled. They're phasing, moving between dimensions. Then another ship vanished, and another. Within seconds, half the enemy fleet had disappeared. Voss exhaled. So that's their game. The hunters weren't going to fight a conventional battle. They were going to attack from beyond reality itself. A low hum echoed through the Revenant's frame as the ship's AI detected distortions in space-time. Then, they struck. The first attack. From nowhere, a black warship materialized above the Revenant, weapons primed. A fraction of a second later, another phased in at the port side, energy lances already charging. The ambush was perfect, unavoidable, instant death. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed the Revenant was prey. They had assumed it would react like a normal ship. They were wrong. The Revenant awakens. Voss barely needed to give the command. The ship's silent weapons had already locked on. The Revenant saw them before they ever appeared. The moment the black warships phased in, the Revenant fired. Dark energy lanced outward, bending physics itself. The first hunter never had a chance. Its shields didn't flicker, didn't fail, because they never existed in the first place. The moment the black ship became real, it was erased. The second warship managed to fire a single shot, just one, before the Revenant's counterattack tore through its hull, unraveling it into atoms. In less than 3 seconds, the first attack wave was gone. Silence returned. Liu exhaled. Holy. The enemy fleet hesitated. They had never seen a ship anticipate a phased attack. They had never seen a ship that didn't flinch. They had come to test the Revenant. Instead, they had awoken it. A message from the dark. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the enemy fleet broadcasted a single message. Not in words, not in threats. Just a simple symbol, one the universe had not seen in thousands of years. Ramirez frowned. What does it mean? Voss stared at the screen, recognizing the shape. It was a mark of respect. A warning to others, a silent declaration. The Revenant was no trick, no illusion, no lie. It was a nightmare given form, and the galaxy would never forget.